Mayor, a Bronx local, has served the community for 33 years as a teacher. She draws on her experience in the classroom to address the common negative perceptions of the Bronx and other urban schools to answer the question, is it as bad as they say? And her book is titled As Bad as They Say. She conceived of the idea for her book in 1995 and tells us the stories of students who jumped over their hurdles to achieve success. Janet's book, of course, is going to be launched a little bit later this month, and we welcome right now Janet Mayer to the show. And Janet, good to have you.
Nice
we want to show people the book, and it's as bad as they say. 3 decades of teaching in the Bronx. That's a pretty long time.
51 years total of teaching.
Wow, and a lot of experience.
Yes.
So you take from this experience and then you begin to put it into here. Mm-hmm. What are your findings? Is it as bad as they say?
The title has a question mark because I want you to look for the answer, but I have 8 chapters dealing with 8 different students who are my heroes. And I have written about the obstacles they overcame, the street obstacles, the home obstacles, the school obstacles, and went on to achieve greatness. Mm-hmm. They're wonderful young people capable of the highest achievement, and I wanted their story told. The title came about in 1994. The American Federation of Teachers ran a pen pal program with South Africa, and I received a letter from a South African professor who told me that his students are just starting school. Under apartheid, they weren't allowed to go to school. They had 300 years of oppression, and not to expect great letters from his students, and to warn my students that the letters might not be well written. And the first day we received a batch of letters. Every one of my students had a letter to read out loud. I read a letter out loud. Almost every letter asked, is the Bronx as bad as they say? And that became the title for my book, and I told that class, that was 1994, and every class after that till 2002 when I retired from full-time teaching, that I would write a book about them when I retired and change the stereotype of Bronx teenagers, that they're my heroes, they're the most wonderful young people, they're hardworking, they're smart, and they do have a lot of obstacles to overcome, but they do overcome them.
In your book, you talk about defying expectations and, the fact that there are some expectations out there. Kids had a lot of stuff to really overcome. What were some of the experiences that you learned that you were able to translate to this book?
I found out that most of them needed someone to intervene, that out there, making it out there on your own is very difficult. So when I had a student who confided in me and told me they were living in the street, for example, or they had no heat or electricity or any kind of normal life at home, I would try and put them together with the right guidance counselors or social workers and tie them up. So it wasn't just, when I was a young person teaching, I thought I was just going to teach English. And then I realized that it sounds kind of corny, but you teach the whole child. It's very hard to teach English to a child who's living in the street or in the wintertime has no heat. Or has no food at home, has no supervision at home. It's hard for kids to care about their grades when nobody at home cares about it. And those problems have to be dealt with, and many students overcome them.
You're pretty vocal in terms of dealing with the whole issue of testing, and 51 years you spent dealing with the whole issue of testing and knowing that, traditionally scores were high, they've taken a dip. Now, when you look at the whole testing issue, you've got a unique perspective on it. And share a little bit about your analysis on the whole testing system.
The standardized testing, as done today, is a fraud. It's not, these tests are not valid. We have 50 states, we have 50 different standardized tests. And according to No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top, our latest so-called reform, you must do well every year on these standardized tests, or you lose funding, principals fired, teachers fired, so everybody does better. The tests get easier and easier so that you get funding from No Child Left Behind. And 2 years ago, the math scores in New York City, all you needed was 44% to pass. 2 years prior to that, it was 65. Last summer, they raised the standards because it was shocking that you needed 44% to pass the math test, and the scores dipped terribly. 85% of the city kids failed the math and reading tests. So these standardized tests have not raised our standards. If anything, they've lowered it because people just teach to the test, and we're not even doing that well.
When you look at that, how does it make you feel now that you're out of the system?
It makes me feel like I want to fight. And I'm teaching for 51 years. I'm still
Right.
teaching part-time. But I see so many things that are being done wrong, things that are called reforms are not reforms. I compare it to the deception of the weapons of mass destruction, and we went to war in Iraq over that, and there were no weapons of mass destruction. Well, these reforms are supposed to be helping our young people, and they're not. We've had, Mayor Bloomberg has been our head of education now for 9 years. The scores have all gone down. There is only one national test. It's called the NA, National Assessment of Educational Progress. Every state has the same test. On scores on the national test, we score terribly. We're doing terribly. That's the only standard test. The rest are bogus. They're just made up and made easier each year in order to obtain money.
Well, you talk a lot about this as in the book, As Bad as They Say, 3 decades of public teaching in the Bronx, I should say. Want to let you know that Janet Mayer's book signing is taking place on June 25th. Where can people pick up your book?
It's sold on Amazon. You could buy it on Amazon. Borders has it. Barnes & Noble and Co-op City has it. And, of course, the bookstore where I'm having my book talk is called Books in the Hood on Westchester Avenue in the Bronx. And
Janet, what do you want people to take away from this reading?
there's going to be a mass march on Washington at the end of July. It's called SOS, Save Our Schools. We want to bring attention to the fact that what's going on, the last chapter of my book is called Deception, Dismantling and Demise of Public Education. And we think people are being defrauded, that they think what's going on is good, and when it's not. So we want to bring the attention of the whole country to the fact that we need to stop now, reassess, look at scientific-based research, study the studies and the statistics and the facts that show that what's being done is not working and needs to be stopped, and let's plan what should be done. Let's spend our billions of dollars on programs that will work, not on what we're doing now.
Interesting insight, Janet Mayer, and we thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. As she said, you can check it out at Amazon.com. If you really want to go local, guess what? June 25th from 3 to 6, we invite you to come to the Books in the Hood, which is 815 Westchester Avenue. There you can get Janet's book, and there you'll be able to have a conversation with her and also get a copy of her book, some pretty interesting stuff. And thank you for all your years of service in the school system.
I love being
51
a teacher.
years.
I love it.
Thank you so much.